SCS software is starting 2026 with a pretty big update. American Truck Simulator 1.58 Open Beta is officially live, and ETS2 is expected to follow very soon. Now, this time around, ATS is getting a little more love with some exclusive additions like the new truck garages and continued progress on the Route 66 rework. But what makes 1.58 truly important is that the changes are fundamental and set the scene for an upcoming year that'll be packed with changes. Because the core foundation upgrades in this update, things like the improved physics, collision behavior, major UI and UX redesigns, and the new Driving Academy module that targets double trailers are happening for both ATS and ETS2. So let's take a deeper dive into everything coming with update 1.58, and more importantly, what kind of foundation it sets for everything SCS is building towards in 2026. The first major update is one that applies for both ATS and ETS2, and that is the continued expansion of Driving Academy. When SCS first introduced this module, it felt like a small bonus feature, a set of training scenarios meant to help newer players understand the basics. A few months ago, more challenging scenarios were introduced, which meant that this module would continue to be developed, we just didn't know for how long. But with 1.58, it became clear that this is turning into something that will stay as part of the game. This update adds an entirely new module focused on the most challenging skill in trucking, double trailer handling. And if you've ever driven doubles in ATS or ETS2, you already know they're kind of tricky. It's a completely different type of control. Everything changes. Your turning radius, how the trailers track behind you, how quickly mistakes can amplify if you're not careful, and especially reversing. So with this addition, SCS is essentially giving us a complete official structured way to practice these skills. I don't want to rush into assumptions, but I am happy to see that the gameplay is being actively worked on. It's a sign that 2026 might be the year where gameplay foundation finally starts to grow. The next major upgrade in this 1.58 update is another change coming to both titles, and I think it's one of the most important foundation improvements in the entire patch, targeting physics and collision behavior updates. It's something you will feel constantly when playing. It affects the way your truck interacts with the world at every moment. So what really changed? Well, SCS has gone back and refined how vehicles behave under contact. Things like curb impacts, trailer movements, collision response in tight spaces, and the general physical feedback of the truck on the road. The goal here wasn't to completely change how ATS and ETS2 drives, it's to make everything feel more consistent, I guess, more believable, if you will, and more modern going forward. And you can notice it especially in places like depots and parking yards, or any situation where you're maneuvering slowly with heavy cargo. Those moments were a small bump or trailer swing that used to be unpredictable before. Now they do feel smoother and more grounded. And this is where updates like 1.58 finally become interesting, because physics improvements aren't just, quality of life, they're foundation for what's coming next. SCS is preparing both games for future vehicle types, gameplay extensions like road trip mode for ATS or coaches for ETS2, potentially more complex ownership systems and more interactive driving experience overall. You can't build new layers on a shaky foundation, so tightening physics and collisions is one of the most important long-term upgrades they can make. And it shows something that I really appreciate. SCS is investing in the fundamentals, not just map DLCs or world expansions. And physics is only half of the work happening in 1.58, because the next change is something that every player will see in the first second when they open the game. The user interface and user experience redesign. Now, I know some of you are still a bit nostalgic for the old UI, but to me this does feel like an upgrade. Because the moment you launch the beta, you can tell SCS is modernizing the way these games present information. In 1.58, we're seeing improvements for multiple elements like a redesigned route advisor, cleaner menu layouts, smarter contextual tutorial hints, and a more structured, future-ready, if you will, interface overall. UI is something that you interact with every single session, whether you're choosing a job, managing your truck, or planning your routes, so even small refinements here make the simulator feel instantly more polished. They're clearly preparing the both games for what's coming next. Larger gameplay expansions that will need a more flexible UI support, a very important upgrade heading in 2026, especially with the console release in mind. Now, I did tell you that ATS is getting a bit more love this patch, and I wasn't lying. In 1.58, SCS has refreshed and expanded the garage system here, with updated layouts, improved visuals, and more variety in how garages actually feel as your home base. And I really like this change. So, bringing garages up to the modern ATS standards is more than just decoration in my book, it strengthens the ownership and progression side of the simulator. And while ETS2 hasn't received this specific upgrade yet, it shows the direction we're heading in, making the world feel more personal. Another area where ATS is getting some extra attention is the map. The continued progress of Route 66 rework. Now, Route 66 is one of the most iconic highways in the American culture, and for a while now, SCS has been steadily rebuilding it to match the current quality of the ATS map. We're seeing more improvements and refinements as this project moves forward, and this also connects directly to what comes next. Because beyond rebuilds, 1.58 is already laying the groundwork for future systems like the road trip mode. So if you're into cars and excited for the road trip module, the first trip you're probably gonna want to make in a Ford Mustang is down a complete Route 66. So when you step back, update 1.58 is a really interesting one. SCS is strengthening the foundation for both ATS and ETS2. So while ATS is getting a bit more love in this open beta, the bigger story is what this update represents for the path we're taking in 2026. This update is the first of many, and I hope you'll enjoy it before moving on to the next one. And as always, until the next time, stay safe on the road and keep on trucking. Cheers.